I was in a place I didn't think could be any safer the first time it happened. It was a typical Sunday morning between the end of Sunday school and the beginning of worship service. As was the norm for those in the children's choir, I went into the choir room a few minutes early to put on my robe. Shortly after I arrived, two boys also in the choir came in to do the same. Or so I thought. I acknowledged them as I started combing through the robes looking for mine, and seconds into my search, the lights went out and the two boys I thought I knew converged on me. They were groping and grabbing whatever they could while I hollered and tried to fight them off. Then, almost as quickly as the lights went off, they were turned back on. They just stood there with pleased looks, smirking and congratulating each other. And the angrier I seemed, the louder they laughed. Most reasonable people would probably assume I ran off to tell someone grown up what happened to me. I didn't. In hindsight, I think my silence stemmed from a combination of the way I was socialized to believe what happened to me was my fault because those things really only happened to fast girls. The fact that my complaint would probably have just been waved off as histrionics, and the likelihood the assault would have been defined as the boys just having a little crush. Ultimately, I convinced myself to be quiet and to avoid ever being alone with them again. That event on that day was the unfortunate beginning of a series of sexual assaults on me that started at around 11 years old and didn't really end until I was 17 or 18. Boys thought my prematurely curvy body was meant for unsolicited touching, and I didn't grow up in a place or time that let me know it wasn't acceptable and I didn't have to take it. We talked good touch, bad touch as a kid, but it was always implied that if it came from an adult, it was a problem. There was never a conversation about it being other kids. So those assaults are the reason I sometimes cringe when the man I love touches me, and why I'm enraged when a man says anything to me about my body, despite him trying to be complimentary and kind. It's why I was relieved when Anita Hill reluctantly but courageously testified during the Clarence Thomas confirmation hearing. For the first time, it occurred to me I didn't have to accept sexual assault or verbal harassment from boys and later men. It's why I'm so protective of my personhood and why my first inclination is to find the nearest brick, bat, or break release the moment I feel it's threatened. And it's the reason many of the conversations about sexual assault and rape allegations against Bill Cosby and his recent mistrial caused by a hung jury infuriate and sicken me. The conversation frequently bypasses a stance to read and observe before developing a definite opinion and goes right into a defense claiming impossibility because racism or because racist conspiracies or because wealth, and of course, because those damn gold diggers. Talk of the tackiness of going to a married man's home and the clearly hoe-like tendencies involved in wearing a crop top to said married man's home lit up my social media account, as if that has ever been grounds for sexual assault or rape. There are no grounds. A whole bunch of how could she's, and that's what that hoe gets, topped it all off, and I wonder if that's what they'd feel about 11-year-old me as well. There I was, tramping it up with my below-the-knee A-shaped dress, my white tights, and my patent leather purse. And I had the nerve to walk into a church choir room unattended like a common hoe. Maybe that's what I get. I'm Malika Rogers, and that's This Week in Fuckery. Thank you for tuning in to Tackling Tomfoolery. I'm Dave Mattingly.
Oh, gosh.
I'm Malika Rogers.
I'm Francie Moore.
And I'm A.M. Lewis.
I couldn't help it. I told y'all before, every morning when I listen to Morning Edition, I totally mouth his name at the same time he says it, and I don't know why I do that. I thought it was just me, but I was on Twitter and saw that a whole bunch of people are doing the exact same thing I'm doing. So now I don't feel quite as crazy, or at least my crazy feels validated.
Right.
But anyway.
I like validation of the crazy. It's
I
helpful.
do too. Then you
It's
feel
helpful.
less alone in it.
That's true.
Crazy is,
Not alone. I am crazy too. Yeah. I feel good knowing I'm not the only Dave Mattingly person. Anyway, how's everybody doing today?
I'm good. I'm good in spite of the heat. And right now, currently, I am drinking.
As am I.
What we have here today is a little Seagram sweet tea, which actually tastes like tea. Mm-hmm. I didn't have any cold ginger ale, so we made it work with some, I think this is mango and blueberry lemonade. It's something, I don't know. But it's working for me. It's doing a work in my life right now, so
Amen.
Everything is good.
Amen.
Yes.
I am having Jim Beam honey with apple juice.
Yum. Jim Beam honey.
Yeah.
That Jim Beam apple goes all the way to work.
I know, and it is my preference, but somebody bought me this honey Jim Beam, which I've had before, but I like the apple better, but they bought me this honey for my birthday. So when I went to the bar, there it was. And so, yeah, it goes pretty well with the apple juice. Not like the Jim Beam apple, but close. Mm-hmm.
And I have to say, I'm not really a Jim Beam fan. You know what my preferences are.
Yes, indeed, Brother Jack. Yes.
Always go for the gentleman. But so not always my preference, but they did that apple. They did that apple.
Yes, they did.
It's so crisp and
really
clean.
Did.
It's a thing of beauty, the way it goes down. Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Shout out to Jim Beam apple. We just did a whole ass commercial. They need to give us $1 or something.
They really do.
Send me some bottles or something.
I heard that.
Yeah, we need at least. Yeah, we need at least 5 bottles of tea.
Some perks in this piece.
That's right. I'm gonna hashtag them on Twitter.
Okay. Shoot, I'm behind. Let me start hashtagging Dr. Teals. They could have sent me on I could have been soaking my damn life away.
That is not a lie. They owe you.
They do.
They do.
Really?
They do. You represent them well. Unofficial spokesperson.
That is correct.
So we're going to get off into the highs and lows.
Checking out the fellas, the highs and lows.
And Franzi, you have some highs and lows?
I do indeed. As you can imagine, I'm sure this is true for all of us. This was a tough week, you know, from to police shooting acquittals, to this to this healthcare business, to just, all of it was ridiculous. So my low is just going to be, yes, that it's true. Yes, that I'm both torn apart by it and not at all surprised. But my low is just the after public moment that Philando Castile's mom had. You know, that thing broke my whole heart. I mean, the regular press conference was bad enough, but you know, when she got in that car and let it loose, like I watched it and I felt broken, and I couldn't be mad at her at all because she did not lie at all. So,
not one lie.
And for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, we'll put the link there. But just watching that, it was absolutely the lowest week of the moment of the week for me, because how can you deny her? You know, what did she call it? The fucked up mothers club.
Yep.
Yeah. So that was my low. My high, though, is really fun. So Candace and I went to a concert on Friday. We go to these concerts all the time, but during the record, there's a group called ATL Collective, and they reproduce what they call classic albums, more than 20 years old. And during the record flip, this band came on there. The name of the band is All Cows Eat Grass. They did a set of about 5 songs. And when I tell you that they just rocked my whole world. So now I'm going to put a link to the YouTube song that I'm talking about, but I want you to know that when you're in the club, it sounds like like it is like the beat is so real and dirty, but they're so like quirky and cool that it was awesome. And the song that I've been listening to all week, is a song called SMH. And some of the lyrics, my favorite lyrics are like, I'm here to stay. I won't go away till the day I'm dead. But until that date, niggas gonna hate. And they got me shaking my head. And the whole song is like, you guys are flossing. You think you're awesome. And all I'm saying is just because you got picked up doesn't mean you're the best. And I'm just looking at you shaking my head. When I tell you it gave me so much life, like it was the best thing that happened to me all week. And so several times before Candace left, we were looking. I was like, got me shaking my head. So that's been giving me all the life.
So are you saying that at these shows they just cover an album from beginning to end?
Yeah, it's really cool. So the actual show is what's going on, which is a weird album to reproduce, but it was very good. They had good singers, they had good players. We go all the time, like we go all the time. But the concept I think is really cool because it's all Atlanta local artists and bands, reproducing these songs. And some of them are straightforward covers and some of them are a little special, but it's really fun. It's really cool. It's a cool idea.
I asked that because a couple months ago they did a show like that here. Unfortunately, it's not a regular happening, but it was the whole Tammy Terrell, Marvin Gaye album. It was so good. It was such a fun show. It was good singing. There were all kind of great musicians. It was really a lot of fun, and I went with my mom, which made it more fun. Someone who was around when the album was first released, so that was cool. It was a cool experience, and there were a lot of the age range was super wide. So there were kids in there who were 7, and there were people in there who were needed a walker to get around, and the babies were dancing. They were having such a good time with that music. And so I thought that was pretty dope. But I like the idea of having it be a regular occurrence. That sounds cool.
I wish you lived here because they're doing the Low End Theory next month, and
oh my God, book me a flight. I need to be there. I would go crazy for that. You're going to have to Facebook Live or some hood shit.
Something.
So that we can be at home bobbing our heads like we're there.
Yeah.
I like when Facebook Live is some hood shit.
Well, it can be when people record a whole. It is. You're going to record a whole concert. Somebody would do that. I mean, I have seen where people go a little bit too far. I'm at the such and such show. And then it's like 30 minutes long of them just recording all the songs. Sir, ma'am, you're doing too much. Just give us a snippet and move on.
That's it. That's exactly what I was going to say. I just need a snippet. Let me tell you, when Kanye came, it was as though I saw everything leading up to the meltdown, because it seemed like everybody in my friend list, was there, and everybody and their mama was going live. That's the first time I was like, well, no, it's not the first time. That was yet another time where I was like, they really need to rethink this live business.
It's too much.
Shenanigans.
It is entirely too much.
This too much. It's just entirely too much.
So, AM, do you have highs and lows?
Indeed. I do. My low is, unofficially is absolutely what Francie was talking about. As she said, I don't know anybody living in some brown skin, and in some cases, not even brown skin, just folks with some sense and some compassion who didn't have a rough week, But my low, and we talked about this a little bit, Malika, was I watched this last season of Orange is the New Black, and I just wasn't feeling it. I didn't read much in advance, so I didn't realize that the whole season was going to take place over a series of days. I won't elaborate because even though it's been out for a while, I don't want to spoil. But it just was not what I was anticipating. It was lacking some of the elements that I really appreciate about that show. I wish Piper and Alex would go away.
Oh, forever.
Why won't they die?
The ways that I don't care are unmeasurable. Like, when whatever scientists are like, there were trace amounts of, you can't even find trace amounts of care for those two characters within my being. I don't care. So, Netflix has little seasons and you got to wait for a whole year for the new. I've been waiting for a whole year to find out, how they were going to pick up this story. And I really feel like the writers were slacking and just got kind of lazy, and it was a disappointment to me.
Didn't you kind of? Oh, sorry. Go
ahead, Francie. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I felt like they became really preoccupied with making points instead of making the show good.
I think
so.
That's
They
fair.
wanted to talk about, this is what happens when people don't get an education. Go, Black Cindy. You know what I mean? Like. They just
Oh boy. Yes, indeed. I do feel that way. And it was a botheration to me. And yet I couldn't stop watching. Probably about 3 episodes in, I was like, ugh. Mm-hmm. But I had to follow through. I had to carry it out through the end. And I don't know what's going to happen next season. They better come on with the come on. They better have done a time leap of some sort.
Right.
Or something. Otherwise, I don't know if I can continue on. Go ahead, friends.
No.
My high is revisiting the most chocolatey, delicious bay of all bays.
Mm-hmm.
Kofi. I don't know if it's Siribo. I should have asked Jeannie before I got on here talking about this man's name. Kofi Siribo, who plays Ralph Angel on Queen Sugar. The last time I shouted it out, I hadn't even watched Queen Sugar, but now I've seen the whole first season. I think season 2 has started, and I can't wait. And he's beautiful, and he's just okay. So anyway, lest I get distracted talking about his beauty, there's a video that The Root posted that's making the rounds, and he's talking about Blackness and saying how much he loves being Black and loves everything about it. He loves his skin. He loves the way that we do the things that we do, the way we create, the way we love. And he says, and I'm paraphrasing, but we'll have a link on the show page, that he didn't ask to be Black. He didn't get to choose it, but he feels lucky. He feels lucky that he gets to experience this world as a Black man. And that's really kind of a revolutionary statement. Mm-hmm. Given all of the things that have happened and continue to happen, and the way that it seems like Black bodies have just been strewn like, I don't know, not confetti, but dice. Okay. Just as casually, and particularly Black men, to say something like that, knowing the peril that Black men are in every day, was so powerful. And then just, the kind of look of joy on his face as he was saying these things. It was so wonderful. And he seems to be a person who is always holding up and uplifting Blackness. And he's young. What is he, 25 or something? He's very young, but he seems very grounded in who he is, and in his Blackness. And that just, it would always be an uplifting thing, but at a time such as now, it really resonated with everything within me, with my spirit, and also when I looked at him with other parts too, because again, he's beautiful. Oh my God. Yeah, so those are my highs and lows.
Can I just say that when I watched the video, I had to read the transcript, because when he opens his mouth, all I hear are the words to RFTWs, let me love you down.
Girl, yes. I personally do the remix. It never really mattered too much to me that you were just too damn young for me.
That's right. Well, he's singing it. He's singing it.
He's singing it to you?
He's singing it to
All right.
Yeah.
All right. I like it. I can work with that. Yeah, I don't know who made him, but
Jesus.
Honey,
that's Black Jesus' work if nothing else is.
Yes, I look at him and I think two things. I think, ooh, the Lord sure knows his work. And then I think, and I know there was a God.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Oh, gosh.
I do like Queen Sugar, but sometimes I don't think it's, excellent, right? And in those moments when I don't think it's excellent, when he starts talking, I don't even care.
Okay.
Suddenly I'm like, this is the best show I've ever seen in my entire life. I've never seen something so brilliant, but it's on mute.
It's so beautiful.
But yeah, all right, I don't even care.
Between him and
Nova.
Yes. Oh.
Why is that woman so gorgeous?
Oh, the chocolatey smooth. You know their skin feels like velvet, right? You know that.
And it smells like something amazing, I'm sure, that just naturally comes out of their pores.
He smells like oils. Come on. You know he gets the oils.
They both do. There's no way they don't smell amazing.
You're right. And she got dreads too.
They just smell like...
twist them up with some beeswax with some oils in it or something. I don't know. They just
smell
both
like
smell
Pretty.
Amazing. Yes. Yes, they do. Both of them.
If Pretty had a smell, those two smell like it.
So much beautifulness.
I know. Looking like chocolate cake better.
You know, and I don't even like chocolate cake, but I would eat that cake.
Okay. Me neither. And
I would
eat
that cake.
I do like chocolate cake from Costco, though. Costco has an amazing, really dense chocolate cake. That's what Kofi would be. Costco chocolate cake.
I have had Costco chocolate cake, and as far as chocolate cake goes, yes, it's good. And if I like chocolate cake, that would be where I'd always go to get it.
Me too.
If I couldn't get it from Kofi. But anyway, I don't even know that I have a high this week because too many things I think happened for me to really have a high. I will say, over the weekend, and this is a really small thing, but early Sunday morning, a friend initially tagged my boyfriend on Facebook and was like, hey, do you want to meet up at the park and go walking? So then some wives and girlfriends saw the post that he tagged the husbands and boyfriends in, and they were like, well, I'm coming too. So a bunch of us went to the park early Sunday morning before it was ungodly hot and took a walk. And that was a little bit of a high for me. It was just cool to get together. It was cool to do something for our bodies. It was nice to just spend some time walking around the park and chit-chatting. So I guess I'll pick that as my high. It was a little thing, but it was a good thing. The low, well, everything was the low. The acquittals were a low. Prodigy of Mobb Deep passing away was a low. Locally, there was a murder that happened about 3 blocks from my house and 1 block from my mother's house. And the victim, I did not know the victim, but I do know his parents and some of his other family members. And that was a low for me, just senseless shit happening to people. So I have been bothered, for the past week. I've been kind of going between being pissed and being sad. So I'm either enraged or I'm depressed. So that's kind of been the week for me. And honestly, recording today is kind of at least a little piece of a high. And probably the best thing I've had happen since I took a walk on Sunday. So what I think was most bothering me, since, all of us have kind of acknowledge these acquittals. I am I am highly disgusted by the expectation I be somewhere sad and devastated over Steve Scalise and Otto, what is it, Warmbier? And look, I don't care. I don't care. When people start checking for my people and recognizing our humanity, I will consider giving some of my concern to them. But until that time, I don't give any damns about any of that other stuff. My people are literally getting killed and nobody, quotation marks, cares. Court system doesn't care. Legal system doesn't care. People are indifferent to it, have nothing to say. And then when I saw today that a family was awarded $1 million something for their dog getting murdered by a cop, I was I almost tore up my cubicle at work. I was that angry. Like, a fucking dog? Oh my God. So anyway, all of that was low for me. I'm just glad I'm sitting in this chair today talking to y'all. That's probably going to help me get a little more centered today and keep from slapping anyone today. I can't make any promises about tomorrow, but I'm not going to slap anybody today.
I like it. One day at a time.
Sweet Jesus.
That's all I'm asking of you. Because that's the best I can do. I can't even, I'm going to have to go to some kind of AA for slapping bitches or something. I don't know what there is for it, but ooh. You
don't want it.
Anyway.
Hey, fellow tacklers. We thank you so much for listening to our show. If you're interested in supporting us, we would be ever so grateful. You can donate to the Tackling Tomfoolery podcast at patreon.com/Tackling Tomfoolery.
So today we're going to talk about something that we can all relate to in different ways for certain reasons. We're going to talk about not having kids, making that conscious decision to not have them, or having them on your own terms that might not fit with everybody else's terms. So today we're talking, you ain't got no kids, because that's what people say when you tell them you do not have any, you ain't got no kids. Or when you meet someone new and they say, so how many kids do you have? Because it's automatically an assumption. If you're a woman and you're older than 12, surely you must have a kid or 10.
And you're black.
Yes.
Especially and you're black.
Because you black heifers love to have babies. That's all you do. And
with no fathers.
Absolutely. Because why in the world would you do that? Of course, you only have sex with sorry men who leave you. It's all your fault, too.
True. Always.
But if you ask for Hoteps, we don't have kids because Margaret Sanger talked us into having an abortion.
Oh, my God.
I
guess. Yes, that's exactly.
Messing around listening to that white woman.
That's right. Got us all messed up.
Adapting Eurocentric values.
With our wombs empty and whatnot. Shame on it.
You know you wouldn't have periods if you weren't on that Eurocentric diet.
That's right. Because you are a womb man. WOMBMAN. Woman.
Gracious. Gracious.
Damn.
Can I just talk about the strata? Like, there's a subset of people who truly do not believe family planning is an option. And they are people that I do not understand. And I understood it when I was a teacher and the kids were always concerned. It's like, how you ain't got no kids? You know, like that was legitimately their reaction almost every time. Mimo, you're going to be old. You got to have kids. And it's like, here's the thing. People in 2000, whatever year it was, can choose to have children or not have children thanks to the 70s. So the fact that you're here lets me know that didn't get to your parents in the way that it should.
Well, Franzi, you know, when you bring up even the kids asking you and telling you how you better hurry up, I want to ask you because I've known you for so long. and you knew very early in life that you weren't about it. You weren't going to have any kids. You didn't want any. So with making that decision so early in life, how old did it get being told that you change your mind one day, and when you meet the right man, then you'll want to have some babies? Do you still get that even now?
Especially here, I still get it.
Mm-hmm.
I get it both about babies and marriage, that I just don't know. As a matter of fact, I had dinner with friends not too long ago, and one of the people there was saying, well, your real problem is that you just haven't met the man who if you want to raise. And it's like, this is a decision that I've made, period, for my life. I don't want, I just not something that I want for my life. And she's like, you'll change your mind with the right. And it's like, okay, whatever. Ooh. And I don't even argue about it because you don't know my story. You don't know my life. But I think people think that it's a default setting that people, it's a statement that people make when they don't have options, as opposed to an option that someone chose. Mm-hmm. If that makes any sense.
That makes total sense. Yeah. And it's always, I know for me, I didn't make a conscious decision not to have children. But until I got 35, I was open to it for a while. Not exactly open, but figured, okay, if I get in a relationship with someone and that person wants a kid, I'll at least think about it. I might still say no, but I'll think about it. But I will stop thinking about it at 35 because I'm not going to be 35 plus and pregnant. I just don't want that. And I don't want to be old as hell trying to be on somebody's soccer field cheering for my baby and my arthritis is acting up and I'm late for my pinochle club. I don't know how to play pinochle, but if I did. So I just knew at that point, I was like, oh, hell no. And it's a done deal at this point. And my mother was probably the most bothered by it. What about my grandkids? What about them? You have another child, and I'm sure at some point he'll have children. And she said that she'd be dead by then. Well, the children will know a lot of good stories about you. I don't know. There's nothing I can tell you because there are no babies that are going to come out of here. So, I wish you well. But she also told me that in a marriage, she was like, well, if you get married again, you should have at least one child because children help to strengthen your marriage. And honestly, I'm of the mind that children are more likely to ruin it than strengthen it. I'm not saying people shouldn't have children because they'll destroy them. I don't think that. But I think a lot of the time they're more of a point of contention between couples than they are a unifier, or people use them as an excuse to not work on their marriage. And then when the children get old enough and they bounce, then the marriage falls apart because they spent all the time just focused on the children. So anyway,
don't you think a lot of mothers put pressure on their kids? I was at a book club on Sunday, and this woman who bragged multiple times about being a feminist, but talked about how she was not okay with her child, who's currently less than 20, deciding to not have children because she has to be a grandmother. And so it's like, well, you need to go adopt some children. You need to make some friends of, everybody who has young kids, they're always happy to meet someone who wants to babysit. So you need to go adopt a child. And I will say that I'm very grateful because my mother always told me, I'm not ready for grandkids until you're ready for kids. I didn't think I was going to have kids, period. So you're just a bonus. But I appreciate that because, if she thought she wanted grandchildren, she would be crying her eyes out today. That's what I'll tell you every night. And she wouldn't be talking to me about
it. No, because I'm not trying to hear it. No.
Do you feel
cry silently?
Right? Silent tears. Do you feel like you have expectations of grandchildren?
Girl, please. No, I do not. As a matter of fact, we just had this conversation recently, I told the girl, it's really okay. If you don't want to have kids, I'll be fine. Mm-hmm. And she was like, no, I know that I want to have kids. Not now, but I know that's something that I want. Okay, that's fine. But I honestly, until maybe last year, I felt like she just got out of the house.
Right. Yeah.
I just became, my nest just emptied. What in the whole ass hell do I want with an arm baby? You didn't have to babysit and whatnot. Plus, I'm really not ready. In an interesting way, I am not ready for that connection with another person. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I'm happy putting all of my maternal energy into this kid who is now grown. When she has a kid, everybody that I know who has grandchildren, even ones who sound like me, are like, man, I don't care. Do what you do. Those babies come and they lose all their shit. Okay? Yeah. To a person, they totally flip. I'm not going to be the kind of grandmother. I don't have time. I had a life. I ain't fixing to be babysitting grandkids all the time. Blah, 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 blah. Hey, girl, what you doing? Oh, you doing the kids? Is that the good? I got a little Jasmine and girl, let me go. To a T. So I am not ready for that kind of emotional commitment. Really? I'm cool for a minute. I am cool. When she's ready, I'll be ready. She's not ready, I'm good with it. So to answer your question again in a more succinct fashion, hell no. No. I don't want any parts of it. Mm-mm.
Why do you think moms put I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I wonder what it is. Why do moms put so much pressure on daughters to have, and not just daughters, I know sons too, but on their kids to have kids? And it seems to me that the worse the mom was, the more pressure they put on the kid to have a grandkid.
I wonder if a lot of those women, especially the ones who may have been crap mothers, are trying to redeem themselves through their grandchildren. Well, I screwed this up royally, but these grandbabies, that's my chance. One, they're not going to be judging me because they don't know how shitty I've been. Two, they're a blank slate, so I get to maybe have some influence and input in a positive way that maybe I didn't or couldn't do with my own children. I kind of think that. And I also think that for some women, and I guess men too, but I mostly just see this with moms, I think grandchildren are some kind of status symbol. Yeah. It is like a social status symbol. I can walk around with these pictures in my phone and I can tell all these stories about my grandbabies and what they do and where they live and how smart they are and, whatever else. I think it is that for a lot of people. I can say for me as a kid, I think to a certain extent, I was that for one of my grandmothers, my mother's mother. And my grandmother didn't want any children. Obviously, she had my mom. But back then, it was, there weren't a lot of women saying they didn't want any children. There might have been a lot of women who didn't want them, but it was like they couldn't say they didn't. Mm-hmm. So I think where, she and my grandfather had been married for like a really long time. And she was not thinking about any babies. And I don't think she's actively said that to him. And so after my aunt, my grandmother's sister, had her first kid, my grandfather looked at my grandma and he's like, so when are we going to start our family? And my grandma was like, why would we want to do that? So I hadn't intended on doing that. For her, it was mainly because she grew up the oldest girl of 10 children. And having to change so-and-so's diaper or, watch this kid or, whatever. All of that, she was like, I don't want any parts of that shit. I got enough of it when I was a kid. So she wasn't interested in that. And she was super independent. She was college educated. She was a professional woman. So all that was more interesting to her and more of her focus than having children. So I guess my grandfather was, I don't know. I think maybe he kind of guilted her into having a baby. Maybe during that time she felt like, well, this is what women do. And I didn't tell this man I wasn't ever going to have a baby. So maybe he feels like he got played. So she had a kid. And then when my mom had me, initially, my grandmother was, judgmental because my parents weren't married and it wasn't the way she thought it should look. But when I got here, that woman could not leave me alone. My grandmother was all about me, taking me places, telling everybody stories about me. People I didn't even know when they would meet me. Oh, I know about your this and your that. I saw your last report card. So she was very involved, but very braggadocious, because I think that's what I was for her. I was a status symbol. I am now a grandmother, and I have someone I can brag about. So.
Well, at least she liked you enough to brag about you, because Martha did no bragging. Martha was like, wait, you want me to watch them kids? They're going to be over here reading? No.
Well, Francie, my relationship with my grandmother was not rosy past. I was her status symbol until I was about 10 and developed my own ideas about everything. And that is when it sort of fell apart. So we both know that the shit wasn't sexy the whole time. But I do think for her, that's what it was to be able to say, I have a grandchild. Sure. I am a grandmother. That meant something to her in some odd way. And like I said, I thought it was weird for a woman who didn't want children at all to feel that way. But that's how she acted.
You know what? I have a somewhat different take on that.
Tell us more.
Just lean in, children, lean in. I have always wondered about that too. Like, what is the deal with the grandchildren lust? Because it really becomes, a thing. And something interesting has happened to me in probably the last month, maybe, where I have felt this kind of sadness around realizing I'm not going to have kids anymore. I'm never going to have kids. And this isn't an epiphany. I had known I was not going to have any more kids since I was rendered unable at least 10 years ago. And was fine with it and am fine with it. But I keep running across pregnant women or babies, and there's the oddest little tug of kind of like, man, that's a wrap for me. I am not doing any of that anymore. And I don't want to, but it's still kind of sad to know that I'm never going to. And I wonder if that does not play into women wanting grandchildren. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's as close as you can get to having that baby experience all over again. Because what I really want is to have a touch of the baby experience. A touch. Not all of it. A touch. So you get that when you have a grandchild, right? It totally would satisfy that, I'm certain. Then you get the best of both worlds, because then you can hand that baby back off to its parents. Yes. And then they go and do all of the real legwork. And I don't know if this is unique to me, because I've never heard anyone say anything about this before. So I don't know if it's uniquely my thing or yet another thing that women go through that they don't really talk about. But I could see it being such. And I could see that having some kind of impact on wanting a grandchildren.
I have not heard it discussed by anyone I know, but I have seen it kind of discussed on like sitcoms and things I've watched where it's sort of the difference between being able to have more children and just not wanting to, and knowing that you can't. You don't want to, but you can't. And I think I've heard that discussed before, maybe not quite in the same way as you're saying, but there definitely is a difference between making the decision that you don't want to, and having the decision sometimes made for you, even if you're on board with it.
Right.
Mm-hmm. I think there is a difference there. And I could totally see a woman being like, well, can I at least get some grandbabies? And, nothing's happening over here. Maybe I don't want to have a baby. I don't want to be pregnant, but I know I can't. And that's different sometimes from just, well, I could if I wanted to,
But I don't want to. I choose not to.
And knowing that you don't have the option is different.
I've talked about this before, but in my second marriage, my second husband didn't want kids and then had a vasectomy. I wasn't sure if I wanted kids, but I wasn't sure I didn't want kids. So the opportunity to make that decision was taken away, basically. Mm-hmm. So I didn't get to decide with any kind of finality whether I did or I didn't want to have children. And that was one thing that I had to come to terms with. And now this is like that second level settling kind of, right? Mm-hmm. All these years later, all these years after he had a vasectomy, after I had a hysterectomy, after we got a divorce, there's this new kind of, that's not ever going to happen again, kind of realization that I'm coming to terms with. And it's really bittersweet because don't get me wrong, I'm still kind of glad.
Right.
But I'm still also kind of sad about it.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I can understand that.
I don't know who's supposed to knock me up, but
Casper.
It should be somebody. Ooh, girl.
Oh, please.
Kofi.
I will regenerate a uterus for him. Okay?
I was about to say, I will go down to Kaiser and get my tubes back.
Okay.
For that.
This conversation reminds me of, the videos where the women answer questions, and not just women, but people answer questions and take their clothes off. What's that called?
Style Like You.
Style Like You. There was one with a Black woman who lived in New York City, and she was like a fashion buyer, and she was talking about how, or designer or stylist or something, and she was talking about coming to grips with understanding that she had lived a life that she really wanted to live and thought that she was, in this conversation, she was also talking about, not being able to find a significant other, but kind of coming to the realization that now, and she had a great body, and she's, kind of looking down at her stomach and was saying, no baby will ever be here. And because no baby will ever be here, I won't have grandkids. And I don't think it was like a status thing, but I think it was more like, Alicia, what you were saying, which is like sort of a final realization in her case of, I've made good choices for my life. I've lived a life that I really enjoyed. Children did not fit into that, but I always thought there would be someone who would come and then I would have time. I would make time, but that didn't happen. And now I'm sort of reconciling, this being where I am. I don't remember her name or anything like that, but that makes sense to me, especially when you are in a place, when your body is reminding you that that's where you are.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know for me, I don't have any regrets about not having more children. But sometimes I do think, what's going to happen when I get old? And maybe I need to go in a home or, whatever. I might need some extra care. And I feel like I'm just going to end up like Emma. Was it Emma Thompson in Wit? Did you ever see that movie?
Yes.
Where she's in the hospital. This bitch is dying of the cancer, and she has nobody. She's got no children. She's got no spouse. She's got nothing. Like one person comes to see her, and it's like one of her old teachers from when she was a kid or something. And I was like, it's a really good movie, though. I know it sounds depressing, and it kind of is, but it's a really good movie. But anyway, I sometimes think of, is that going to be me? And I know that I wouldn't ever be alone in that way. And I also know that children are not the only way to not be alone in that way. I do know that. But I
and they're
also,
not a guarantee either.
That's
damn right, because they can end up being some real sorry somebodies and not looking out for their parents. So I know those things, and yet I still have moments where I think, ooh, so like if I'm 85 and I need some help, who the hell am I going to ask? And yes, I have a stepkid. That's a stepkid. I don't have expectations of this child to look out for me that way. She's got two parents of her own. I don't have that expectation of her. But I do think of, geez, I need to get myself some kind of old person life plan. You know, that won't include, you know, having some kind of dependence on children I don't have. And I also wanted to talk about how, for me, when people say, "Oh, you ain't got no kids," because I don't know why they always say it like that, but anyway, when people say that, it is at times super disconcerting for me, because I lost a child. Right. So when, one, it's already weird for me when people ask me if I have any children, because I feel like if I say no, I'm not telling a whole story. But I also don't feel obligated to tell everybody all my business off top, right?
Yeah.
And I do not like when, you know, you ask a simple question and then people give you a long ass sad sack story. I do not really care for that. But I'm like, well, I did have a child, you know. So that's already a weird question for me, because, well, yeah, she was here, she existed, and now she's not here. So that sometimes I think makes me more irritated by the tone of the question, because of the grief I carry and people sort of being dismissive or making assumptions about who I am based on me not having children without knowing what I've been through that led to me not having children later on in life. Like I said, I specifically decided I did not want any more children. I purposefully made that decision, and I'm good with that decision. But sometimes I am bothered, you know, because people don't think about those things. They don't think about women like me who have lost a child. They don't think about women who wish they could have one and couldn't. Women who are trying their level best, exhausting every possibility, and a pregnancy just hasn't been in the cards for them. So I think people don't consider those things, you know, when they run their mouths, and then they just think you're selfish because you don't have any children. You just want life to be all about you. And it's like, well, no, that's not my story. But,
well, that's my story, and I think it's rude for you to ask. I think that asking stuff like that is like asking about your sexual identity when we clearly are not having that conversation. Right. Like, I can't think of any circumstance under which I would ask someone, so like, how do you identify sexually? Like, unless we're maybe going to have sex, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I think, I just feel like it's the kind of thing that is private and people act like it's public. Like when you are pregnant and people act like you can they should be able to touch you because you're protrude into the world, you know? I just think, and I think people are so, and I sometimes feel like people are really catty. People who have children are really catty about it. And I'll never forget, I was talking, I was somewhere with people who weren't really my friends. I don't know where I was, but they were like, oh, and I was talking about, you know, places I've been and what my life is, you know, just like, and they're like, oh, you go a lot of places. And it's like, you know what? I enjoy it. It's, you know, part of what I do for work. And they're like, oh, well, clearly, you know, your kids, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, wow, fortunately, the only things that I have vowed to take care of are like my Roku, my vibrator, and they're fine being alone with you.
I like it. Priorities, Francie, priorities.
And I don't. And along with that, a lot of times comes this assumption that you have no responsibilities, no obligations, an endless stream of money. Everything you touch turns to something magical because you don't have any children. It's almost like people are resentful that you are not perhaps suffering some of the things they might be suffering in their parenting, you know. But I do have a lot of, but you wouldn't understand that because you don't have kids, or you wouldn't know. Well, I'm sure you always have money because you don't have any kids. And that shit gets on my last nerve.
Like the money tree grows in a uterus.
Yes, right? And like when I got in a relationship.
That explains why I'm always broke.
No uterus. See, damn it.
Sorry.
When I got into a relationship, and I've had people say shit like, oh, now you get it because he's a father. Now you understand. Bitch, I already understood. I didn't have to have children to grasp certain concepts. And because I have had a child and everybody doesn't know that about me, you know, I resent even the assumption because you don't know me. But even if I am just a full-on jerk and I am all about myself, I feel like I have that right. I have that right. I'm not beholden to a child. Well, now I am to a certain extent, but you know, I didn't have any more children because I didn't want to. And I enjoyed my freedom. I enjoyed doing what I want when I wanted. I enjoyed not having to stop and think, oh, I need to feed this baby, or this baby needs to go to bed, so I guess I better go home. I enjoyed not having to do any of those things. I would have preferred to have experienced them with my child, but since she is not here, I have to keep living. And I never felt like, oh, I wish I'd had more children so that I too could be doing whatever a lot of these other people are doing. I felt good being single without any children. I was okay with that.
Yeah.
I think there's a certain, you know, sometimes you're ostracized if you don't have children in some circles, or people will tell you you don't know what you're talking about if you don't have any children. I've seen a lot of rant on Facebook in my day from people who, you know, I'm tired of people who don't have any kids trying to tell me what to do with my kids.
Well,
like, some things to a certain extent I get it, but I also know that good information and valid advice are that regardless of who the source might be. And a person might not have had to raise a whole child to know some things are not going to work. I didn't get to raise a child to adulthood, but I used to be a child.
Right. And you've known other children.
And I've known other children. And I've been active in a lot of kids' lives. So I might know one or two things. And I definitely don't say anything to parents about their children or about their parenting without knowing I know what I'm talking about. I don't just dole out advice without being solicited to some extent.
I think sometimes there's validity to that, though. I think that there are times where hypothetical and real life are a little bit different. I wouldn't discredit someone's advice just because they're not parents, because, as you've said, sometimes good advice is good advice. But there are times where sometimes someone who hasn't had kids can be a little bit glib. Well, what I would do is such, and you just pop, 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 pop.
Yeah, that's different to me.
Well, okay.
Yeah, I think that's different though, Alicia. I do think some people can be assholes about it, but there are times when people are genuinely like, "Hey, man, I don't think calling your kids little bitches is a good idea."
And you don't know nothing about this.
Yeah,
listen,
exactly.
The person who's out there calling their kids little bitches isn't the person that's going to listen to anybody from any respect, basically. I mean, come on now.
But you know what's funny is that my mom all the time tells people stories and they're like, you just don't remember. That's not how it was for you. That's not how you were with your girls. God. And I'm like, listen, I'm here to let you know. It's so funny how many people tell my mom that she misremembers her whooping us. She misremembers like the kinds of things we would and would not do. And it's like, no, listen. Cheryl Z is a lot of things, but you don't know what you're talking about. So I just think it's, what people's experience is, a lot of that, a lot of the way that people react. It's like, what are you talking about? You can have a kid and, set boundaries. What are you talking about? Set boundaries.
Like it's an impossibility.
Right.
Yeah.
You don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. This child was born to walk around eating chips. I know she's just 3, but she can't sit down and eat.
Now you're out here telling people's business, Francie.
Ma'am, I don't know what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you do.
And you're rude. You're rude. We're not fantastical.
My bad. Francie, look at you out here with those hypothetical, not at all realistic scenarios you are talking about. Anyway, I mean, ultimately, I know for myself, I don't have any regret about my childless scenario. My decision.
Child-free.
I am.
Is the way to be. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Since 2003.
With my new situation, there's a kid in my house, so I have different set of obligations and responsibility because the child lives here. So, but being a bonus parent is still different from, this baby that you've given birth to who's always been with you and all of that. So it's still not the same level of, I don't know, responsibility, maybe I'd say. But I definitely am just as vested in her as I was in my own child. I just don't have all the same responsibilities as she has to parent. So I do get to be like a bona fide bonus one, So that's a different situation. But it is, like I said, it hasn't changed what I feel is my level of obligation to her as the adult woman who lives in the house with her. Doesn't change that for me. But I tell you what I'm not going to do is be telling people what they don't know. Because you don't have any children. Not that. So. Anyway, I guess we're going to go on into the shout out. Francie, do you have a shout out this week?
I do have a shout out. This shout out is about a book. And I'm clearly very late. The book came out last year, but I finally read Homegoing. I believe the author's name is pronounced Yar Jesse. And I just want to tell you that she is a baby. She's 27 years old. And I just want you to know that this book is like one of the best things that has ever happened to my whole Black life. And it is just a 7-generation saga of the African diaspora from one place to another. Like it talks about the trade of Africans profiting in a way that they may or may not have had a whole lot of choice about, profiting from slavery, and then the actual slave into Reconstruction. Like the book is just stunning. It's sad, but it's triumphant. it is just really stunning. Like she's again a child, and the book is amazing. It's just amazing. So that's my shout out.
Long book. Is it a long book, friend?
It's about 300 pages.
Oh, that's fine. You know, my attention span is trash, so that's what I was asking. I can add that to my list then.
Oh, you should, because it is like everything womanhood, blackness, like diasporic dreams, primordial connections, like things that you're like, wait a minute, is that why I like that song? You know, I thought about our conversation about Busta Rhymes and Put Your Hands Around. I was like, yes, that's the drum inherited through it.
Yep, the drum.
But no,
absolutely.
It is so good. It's so good. It's so good.
Word. I've been meaning to pick that up.
AM, do you have a shout out?
I had a shout out for the people. I might have 1.5 shout outs. The first one is to Rudy McGee, my dad.
Oh, Mr. McGee.
We had kicked it because it was Father's Day. It took him to his most favorite place, which caused great angst and suffering for the rest of us because it was horrible and crowded and overheated. And then I went over to my parents, I want to say Monday, and my dad is known to tell tall tales, right? And this week's tales included him being an ally to a young gay man on the campus of Alcorn State in the 50s who was about to be beat up by some football players, as well as a young woman who it seemed might have been on the verge of sexual assault by the same football players. And he, all 5'3" of Rudolph McGee, interceded and saved the day both times. Now, there may be some truth to this because word on the street is Rudy used to be about that life back in the day. He was a G to the core and did not play, and you would not want it with him. So there may be some element of truth in it, but the way that he sits back and tells a story, you know, he's like Forrest Gump in The Little Black Man, and it's hilarious, and I love it, and it's hella cute. Yeah. So that's my primary shout out. My other shout out is just about playlists. A friend of mine made me the most amazing Spotify playlist ever in the world, and I've been listening to it for like 2 days, and it's changing my whole life. It's like my go-to in these times of strife, right? And it's just like the perfect combination of some old shit and some new shit. Music is so wonderful and therapeutic and healing and dope. So that's the 0.5 of my 1.5 shout outs. The end.
All right. So, though this isn't the most pleasant topic, I am going to shout out Son of Baldwin. He has said a lot of things over the past week that made me want to squeeze him, or just stand up and shout at him like I was at church. But he wrote this piece called The Cosby Show Unmasked, and basically he wrote sort of like a treatment for the show if Heathcliff and Bill were the same person. So in terms of thinking of Cosby as a rapist, he wrote it thinking, with he became an OBGYN so he could have easy access to women. Sandra went away to school and doesn't come home very often and went as far away as she could because she wanted to get away from him because he was touching her. Denise's life is all askew because he was touching her. Vanessa sometimes is rebellious because he was touching her. And Theo struggles with school and whatever else because he's distracted by his guilt for not being able to stop what was happening. So he wrote this whole thing and it was like, well, shit, I never would have thought of anything like this because I've always been one of those people who's always saying, you know, Bill's a person and Heathcliff is a character. And that is true. But he was like, what if it isn't like that? You know, and he was saying, why would the way we look at Heathcliff and Bill separately be the way it is when we don't listen to R. Kelly music and immediately think, ew, he's singing this to a child or about a child, and we get mad and we don't want to hear that. We turn it off, right? He's like, so why can't we think of Heathcliff as this gross, rapey individual? And so anyway, that was kind of his line of thinking when he wrote it. And anyway, we are going to post a link to it. It was, I don't know, it was just thought-provoking. And his perspective was just unique in what he wrote. And plus, like I said, visit his website because he's had a lot of shit to say this week, not just this thing about Cosby. But anyway, shout out to Son of Baldwin for his honesty and for just, you know, being a smart. Appreciate it.
Word.
Yeah, definitely give him a shout out because he's getting all the hate mail this week.
Yes,
I was
he
just
is
gonna
indeed.
say.
And I have been sending him like tweets like, you talking about it. I'm not even mad at you. So anyway, that's my shout out. Like I said, it's not the you know, not fun subject matter, but it is worth, to me, very much worth the read.
Yeah.
So anyway, we thank you so much for tuning in to Tackling Tomfoolery. I am not Dave Mattingly. I am Melissa Rogers.
I'm Francie Moore.
And I'm Ann Lewis.
Peace out.
Bye, y'all.
Tackling Tomfoolery is produced by Bren Inman for Evergreen Talent Collective. For more information, find us on the web at www.tacklingtomfoolery.com, on Facebook at Tackling Tomfoolery, and on Twitter and Instagram. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, or SoundCloud, and make sure you rate and review the show, as that helps people find us. If you'd like to contact the show, email us at tacklingtomfoolery@gmail.com or leave us a voicemail at 916-573-1065. Let us know what tomfoolery you're tackling. Thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you soon.